After I8.8 of the anarchist FAQ, but did the Spanish collectives innovate? Yes. In contradiction to the old capitalist claim that no one will innovate unless private property exists, the workers and peasants exhibited much more incentive and creativity under libertarian socialism than they had under the private enterprise system. This is apparent from Gaston Laval's description of the results of collectivization in Caragante. Caragante is situated in the southern part of the province of Valencia. The climate of the region is particularly suited for the cultivation of oranges. All of the socialized land, without exception, is cultivated with infinite care. The orchards are thoughtfully weeded to ensure that the trees will get all the nourishment needed. The peasants are incessantly cleaning the soil. Before, they told me with pride, all this belonged to the rich and was worked by miserably paid laborers. The land was neglected and the owners had to buy immense quantities of chemical fertilizers, although they could have gotten much better yields by cleaning the soil. With pride, they showed me trees that had been grafted to produce better fruit. In many places, I observed plants growing in the shade of orange trees. What is this, I asked. I learned that the Levant peasants, famous for their ingenuity, have abundantly planted potatoes among the orange groves. The peasants demonstrate more intelligence than all the bureaucrats in the Ministry of Agriculture combined. They do more than just plant potatoes. Throughout the whole region of the Levant, where the soil is suitable, they grow crops. They take advantage of the 4-month fallow period in the rice fields. Had the Minister of Agriculture followed the example of these peasants throughout the Republican zone, the bread shortage problem would have been overcome in a few months. Cited in Dogloff Anarchist Collectives. This is just one from a multitude of examples expressed in the accounts of both the industrial and rural collectives. For more, see section C2.3, in which we present more examples to refute that charge that workers' control would stifle innovation, and I8.6. The available evidence proves that the membership of the collective showed a keen awareness of the importance of investment and innovation in order to increase production and to make work both lighter and more interesting, and that the collectives allowed that awareness to be expressed freely. The Spanish collectives indicate that given the challenge, everyone will take an interest in their own affairs and express desire to use their minds to improve their surroundings. In fact, capitalism distorts when innovation exists under hierarchy by channeling it purely in how to save money and maximize investor profit, ignoring other, more important issues. As Don Laval argues, self-management encourages innovation. The theoreticians and partisans of the liberal economy affirm that competition stimulates initiative and, consequently, the great spirit and invention without which it remains dormant. Numerous observations made by the writer in the collectives, factories, and socialized workshops permit him to take quite the opposite view. For in a collective, a grouping where each individual is stimulated by the wish to be of service to his fellows being research, and desire for technical perfection, and so on are also stimulated. They also have a consequence that other individuals join those who were first to get together. Furthermore, when in present society an individual inventor discovers something, it is used only by the capitalist or the individual employing him, whereas in the case of an inventor living in a community, not only is his discovery taken up and developed by others, but it is immediately applied for the common good. I'm convinced that this superiority would soon manifest itself in a socialized society. From Collectives in the Spanish Revolution. Therefore, the actual experiences of self-management in Spain support the points made in section I.8.8.11. Freed from hierarchy, individuals will creatively interact with the world to improve their circumstances. This is not due to market forces, but because the human mind is an active agent, and unless crushed by authority, It can no more stop thinking and acting than the Earth stopped revolving around the Sun. In addition, the collectives indicate that self-management allows ideas to be enriched by discussion. As Bakunin argued, the greatest intelligence would not be equal to comprehension of the whole. Thence results the necessity of the division and association of labor. I receive and I give. Such is human life. Each directs and is directed in turn. Therefore, there is no fixed and constant authority, but a continual exchange of mutual temporary and, above all, voluntary authority and subordination. From God and the State. The experience of self-management proved Bakunin's point that society is more intelligent than even the most intelligent individual, simply because of the wealth of viewpoints, experience, and thoughts contained there. Capitalism impoverishes individuals and society by its artificial boundaries and authority structures. Chapter I.8.9 of the Anarchist FAQ. Why, if it was so good, did it not survive? Just because something is good does not mean that it will survive. For example, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising against the Nazis failed, but that does not mean that the uprising was a bad cause or that the Nazi regime was correct. Far from it. Similarly, when the experiments in worker self-management and communal living undertaken across Republic Spain is one of the most important social experiments in a free society ever undertaken. This cannot change the fact that Franco's forces and the communists had access to more and better weapons. This with the aggression and terrorism of Franco, and behind him the military might of fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. The treachery of the communists and the aloofness of the Western bourgeoisie republics, whose policy of non-intervention was strangely ignored when their citizens aided Franco. It is amazing the revolution lasted as long as it did. This does not excuse the actions of the anarchists themselves. As it is well known, the C.N.T. cooperated with other anti-fascist parties and trade unions on the Republic side. See next section. This cooperation led to the C.N.T. joining the anti-fascist government and anarchists becoming ministers of state. This cooperation, more than anything, helped ensure the defeat of the revolution. While much of the blame can be placed at the door of the would-be leaders, who, like most leaders, started to think of themselves irreplaceable, and spokespersons for the organizations they were members of. It must be stated that the rank and file of the movement did little to stop them. Most of the militant anarchists were at the front line and so excluded from union and collective meetings, and so could not influence their fellow workers. It is no surprise that the Friends of Durruti group were mostly ex-militia men. However, it seems that the mirage of anti-fascist unity proved too much for the majority of the C.N.T. members. See sections I and I.2. Some anarchists still maintained that the Spanish anarchist movement had no choice, and that collaboration, while having unfortunate effects, was the only choice available. This view was defended by Sam Dogloff and finds some support in the writings of Gaston Laval, Auguste Souchy, and many other anarchists. However, most anarchists today oppose collaboration and think it was a terrible mistake. At the time, this position was held by the majority of non-Spanish anarchists, plus a large minority of the Spanish movement, becoming a majority as the implications of collaboration became clear. This viewpoint finds its best expression in Vernon Richards' Lessons of the Spanish Revolution, and in part in such work as Anarchists in the Spanish Revolution by José Pierrots, and Anarchist Organization, The History of the FAI by Juan Gomez Casas, as well as in a host of pamphlets and articles written by anarchists ever since. So regardless of how good a social system is, objective facts will overcome that experiment. Saturnino Carrad, a leader of the C.N.T. militia called at the Arrogant Front, sums up the successes of the revolution as well as its objective limitations. Always expecting to be stabbed in the back, always knowing that if we created problems, only the enemy across the lines would stand to gain. It was a tragedy for the anarcho-syndicalist movement, but it was a tragedy for something greater: the Spanish people. For it can never be forgotten that it was the working class and peasantry which, by demonstrating their ability to run industry and agriculture collectively, allowed the Republic to continue the struggle for 32 months. It was they who created a war industry, who kept agricultural production increasing, who formed militias and later joined the army. And without their creative endeavor, the Republic could not have fought the war. Quoted by Fraser in Blood of Spain. Chapter I8.10 of the Anarchist FAQ. Why did the C.N.T. collaborate with the state? As is well known, in September 1936, the C.N.T. joined the Catalan government following the central government in November. This followed on from the decision made on July the 21st to not speak of libertarian communism until after Franco had been defeated. In other words, to collaborate with other anti-fascist parties and unions in a common front against fascism. This initially involved the C.N.T. agreeing to join a central committee of anti-fascist militias, proposed by the leader of the Catalan government, Louis Companys. This committee was made up of representatives of various anti-fascist parties and groups. From this, it was only a matter of time until the C.N.T. joined an official government, as no other means of coordinating activities existed. See section I8.13. The question must arise, why did the C.N.T. decide to collaborate with the state, forsaking its principles and, in its own way, contribute to the counter-revolution and the losing of the war? This is an important question. Indeed, it is one Marxists always throw up in arguments with anarchists or in anti-anarchist diatribes. Does the failure of the C.N.T. to implement anarchism after July 19th mean that anarchist policies are flawed? Or rather, does the experience of the C.N.T. and the FAI during the Spanish Revolution indicate a failure of anarchists rather than of anarchism? A mistake made under difficult objective circumstances, and one which anarchists have learned from? Needless to say, anarchists argue that the latter answer is the correct one. In other words, as Vernon Richards argues, the basis of his criticism is not that anarchist ideas were proved to be unworkable by the Spanish experience, but that the Spanish anarchists and syndicalists failed to put their theories to the test, adopting instead the tactics of the enemy, from lessons of the Spanish Revolution. The writers of this FAQ agree. So why did the C.N.T. collaborate with the state during the Spanish Civil War? Simply put, rather than being the fault of an anarchist theory, as Marxists like to claim, its roots can be discovered in the situations facing the Catalan anarchists on July 20th. The objective conditions facing the leading militants of the C.N.T. and FAI influenced the decisions they took. Decisions which they later justified by misusing anarchist theory. What was the situation facing the Catalan anarchists on July 20th? Simply put, it was an unknown situation. José Peras quotes from the report made by the C.N.T. to the International Workers' Association as follows. Levante was defenseless and uncertain. We were in a minority in Madrid. The situation in Andalusia was unknown. There was no information from the north, and we assumed the rest of Spain was in the hands of the fascists. The enemy was in Aragon at the gates of Catalonia. The nervousness of foreign consular officials led to the presence of a greater number of warships around our ports. Quoted in Anarchism and the Spanish Revolution. He also notes that according to the report, the C.N.T. was absolute control of Catalonia in July 19, 1936, but its strength was less in Levante and still less in Spain, where the central government and the traditional parties were dominant. In the north of Spain, the situation was confused. The C.N.T could have mounted an insurrection on its own with probable success. Such a takeover would have led to a struggle on three fronts against the fascists, the government, and foreign capitalism. In view of the difficulty of such undertaking, collaboration with other anti-fascist groups was the only alternative. In the words of the C.N.T report itself, the C.N.T showed a conscientious scrupulousness in the face of a difficult alternative: to destroy completely the state in Catalonia, to declare war against the rebels, the fascists, the government, foreign capitalism, and thus assuming complete control of Catalan society, or collaborating in the responsibilities of the government with the other anti-fascist fractions. Quoted by Robert Alexander, the anarchists in the Spanish Civil War. Moreover, as Gaston Laval argued, given the general preoccupations of the majority of the population was to defeat the fascists, the anarchists would, if they came out against the state, provoke the antagonism of the majority of the people who would accuse them of collaboration with Franco. Implementing an anarchist revolution would, in all likelihood, also result in the instant closing of the frontier and the blockade by sea by both fascist and the democratic countries. The supply of arms would be completely cut off, and the anarchists would rarely be held responsible for the disastrous consequences. Quoted in the anarchist collectives. While the supporters of Lenin and Trotsky will constantly point out the objective circumstances in which the heroes made their decisions during the Russian Revolution, they rarely mention those facing the anarchists in Spain on the 20th of July 1936. It seems hypocritical to point to the Russian Civil War as the explanation of all Bolshevism's crimes against the working class, indeed humanity, while remaining silent on the forces facing the C.N.T FAI at the start of the Spanish Civil War. The fact that if the C.N.T had decided to implement libertarian communism in Catalonia, they would have to face the fascists, commanding the bulk of the Spanish army, the Republican government commanding the rest, plus those sections of Catalonia which supported it is rarely mentioned. Moreover, the decision to collaborate was made. It was immediately after the defeat of the army uprising in Barcelona. The situation in the rest of the country was uncertain, and when the social revolution was in its early days. Stuart Christie indicates the dilemma facing the leadership of the C.N.T at the time. The higher committees of the C.N.T FAI in Catalonia saw themselves caught on the horns of a dilemma: social revolution, fascism, or bourgeois democracy. Either they committed themselves to the solutions offered by social revolution, regardless of the difficulties involved in fighting both fascism and international capitalism, or through fear of fascism or of the people, they sacrificed their anarchist principles and revolutionary objectives to become part of the bourgeois state. Faced with an imperfect state of affairs and preferring defeat to a possibly Pyrrhic victory, the Catalan anarchist leadership renounced anarchism in the name of expediency and removed the social transformation of Spain from their agenda. But what the C.N.T FAI leaders failed to grasp was that the decision whether or not to implement libertarian communism was not theirs to make. Anarchism was not something which could be transformed from a theory into a practice by organizational decree. The spontaneous defensive movement of 19th July had developed a political directive of its own from We the Anarchists. Given that the pro-fascist army still controlled a third or more of Spain, including Aragon, and that the C.N.T was not the dominant force in the center and north of Spain, it was decided that a war on three fronts would only aid Franco. Moreover, it was a distinct possibility that introducing libertarian communism in Catalonia, Aragon, and elsewhere, the workers' militias and self-managed industries would have been starved of weapons, resources, and credit. That isolation was a real problem. It can be seen from C.N.T's later comments on why the C.N.T joined the government. The Militias Committee guaranteed the supremacy of the people in arms, but we were told, and it was repeated to us endlessly, that as long as we persisted in retaining it, as long as we persisted in propping up the power of the people, weapons would not come to Catalonia, nor now would we be granted the foreign currency to obtain them from abroad, nor would we be supplied with the raw materials for our industry. And since losing the war meant losing everything and returning to a state like that prevailed in the Spain of Ferdinand VII, and in the conviction of the drive given by us and our people could not vanish completely from the new economic life, we quit the Militias Committee and joined the Generalidad government, quoted by Stuart Christie. It was decided that collaboration to reject the basic ideas of anarchism until the war was over. A terrible mistake, but one which can be understood given the circumstances in which it was made. This does not be stressed to justify the decision, but rather to explain it and place it in context. Ultimately, the experience of the Civil War saw a blockade of republic both by democratic and fascist governments, the starving of the militia and self-managed collectives of resources and credit, as well as a war on two fronts. When the state felt strong enough to try and crush the C.N.T and the semi-revolution its members had started. Unfortunately, the anarchist movement did not have a crystal ball with which to see the future. Ultimately, even faced with the danger of fascism, the liberals, the right-wing socialists, and communists preferred to undermine the anti-fascist struggle by attacking the C.N.T. In this, history proved to be totally correct. For us, it is a matter of crushing fascism once again, for all, yes, and in spite of the government. No government in the world fights fascism to the death. When the bourgeoisie sees power slipping from its grasp, it has no recourse to fascism to maintain itself. The liberal government of Spain could have rendered the fascist elements powerless long ago. Instead, it compromised and dallied. Even now, at this moment, there are men in this government who want to go easy on the rebels. You can never tell, he laughed. The present government might yet need these rebellious forces to crush the workers' movement. We know what we want. To us, it means nothing that there is a Soviet Union somewhere in the world, for the sake of whose peace and tranquility the workers of Germany and China were sacrificed to the fascist barbarians by Stalin. We want revolution here in Spain right now. Not maybe after the next European war. We are giving Hitler and Mussolini far more worry today with our revolution than the whole Red Army of Russia. We are setting an example to the German and Italian working class on how to deal with fascism. I do not expect any help for a libertarian revolution from any government in the world. Maybe the conflicting interests of the various imperialists might have, but we expect no help even from our own government in the last analysis. You will be sitting on a pile of ruins if you are victorious, said the journalist Van Payson. Drury answered, we have always lived in slums and holes in the wall. We will know how to accommodate ourselves for a time. But you must not forget, we can also build. It is we, the workers, who built the palaces and cities here in Spain and America and everywhere. We, the workers, can build others to take their place, and better ones. We are not in the least afraid of ruin. We are going to inherit the earth, and there is not the slightest doubt about that. The bourgeoisie might blast and ruin its own world before it leaves the stage of history. We carry a new world here in our hearts. That world is growing this minute. Quoted by Vernon Richards in Lessons of the Spanish Revolution. Isolation, the uneven support for libertarian revolution across Spain, and the dangers of fascism were real problems. But they do not excuse the libertarian movement for its mistakes. As we discussed in sections 8.11 and 8.13, the biggest of these mistakes was forgetting basic anarchist ideas and an anarchist approach to the problems facing the Spanish people. If these ideas had been applied in Spain, the outcome of the Civil War and Revolution would have been different. In summary, while the decision to collaborate is one that can be understood due to the circumstances under which it was made, it cannot be justified in terms of anarchist theory. Indeed, as we argue in the next section, attempts by the C.N.T leadership to justify the decision in terms of anarchist principles are not convincing and cannot be done without making a mockery of anarchism.